The silk of my dress, a pale, hopeful blush color, felt like a lie against my skin. I'd chosen it because Mike said it made me look soft, feminine. Not like the sharp, efficient version of me that existed in the fluorescent-lit world of Dawson and Cole, the ad agency where I was a senior account manager and he was just Mike. My Mike. Or so I'd thought. The air in the city clerk's office was thick with the sterile smell of recycled air and the quiet joy of other couples. A girl in a simple white sundress was giggling as her new husband, a guy in a slightly too tight suit, tried to take a selfie of them with their marriage license. It was clumsy and real, and a pang of envy shot through me. Ours wouldn't be like that. Mike was always running late, always caught up in one more thing. I'd texted him 20 minutes ago, "Here." So nervous. "Call me when you park." He hadn't replied. "Caitlyn Miller," a clerk called out, her voice bored. "You're up. Is your party here?" My cheeks flushed. "He's just parking. Can we have one more minute?" She gave me a look that said she'd heard it 1,000 times and gestured to the plastic chairs. "Take a seat. You'll lose your slot if you're not ready in 10. I sat, my hands clammy, gripping my phone. I called again. Straight to voicemail. A cold dread, completely separate from pre-wedding jitters, began to pool in my stomach. This wasn't just late. This was something else. I opened Instagram, more out of nervous habit than anything else. My feed was a predictable blur of brunch photos and cat videos. And then I saw it. A story posted by Beth, a girl from accounting. It was a photo of a couple at the lobby coffee cart in our office building. The caption read, well, guess who's looking cozy?" The photo was slightly blurry, but I would have recognized that cashmere sweater anywhere. I'd bought it for him for his birthday. And the woman leaning into him, her perfectly manicured hand on his arm, her head tilted back in a laugh that I could practically hear? Emily White. His ex. The one he'd always insisted was just a friend from his past. The world didn't shatter. It just stopped. The background noise of the clerk's office faded to a dull roar. I zoomed in on the photo. His smile was wide, genuine, the kind of smile I hadn't seen from him in months. He was looking at her like she was the answer to a question he'd just asked. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through Beth's stories. There was another one, a video of them getting into an Uber together. Her hand was on his knee. My Mike. My almost husband. On his way to God knows where with his ex-girlfriend on the morning of our wedding. I didn't cry. Not yet. A strange, cold calm settled over me. I typed out a text, my thumbs surprisingly steady. "Mike. I saw the photos. Don't bother coming. It's over. Don't contact me again." I sent it, and then, with a finality that felt both terrifying and liberating, I blocked his number. I stood up, the blush-colored dress swishing around my ankles. The clerk looked up, expectant. "We won't be needing that appointment," I said, my voice a thin, reedy thing I didn't recognize. I walked out of the building, the bright Los Angeles sun a physical assault after the dim interior. I had no plan. No idea where to go. My family was back in Ohio, waiting for a celebratory call. My friends were probably already gathered at the small restaurant where we were supposed to have the reception. The thought of facing them, of explaining, was a mountain I couldn't even begin to climb. I just started walking, my heels clicking an uneven rhythm on the sidewalk. I ended up in a small park a few blocks away, collapsing onto a bench near a fountain. The sound of the water was supposed to be soothing, I guess. It wasn't. It just sounded like time passing. Time that should have been filled with I-dos and champagne toasts was now just empty. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes? An hour? My phone buzzed continuously in my bag. My mom, my best friend Chloe, probably even Mike from a different number. I ignored them all. I just stared at the water, my mind a blank, mercifully numb space. The crunch of footsteps on the gravel path finally pulled me out of my stupor. I didn't look up, hoping whoever it was would just walk on by. But the footsteps stopped. A pair of very expensive, very familiar leather Oxford shoes came to a halt in my peripheral vision. I slowly lifted my gaze. Crisp, charcoal gray trousers. A pristine white shirt, top button undone, tie loosened. A strong jawline set in a grim line. And eyes, intelligent, kind, and currently filled with a quiet understanding that made my chest ache. It was my boss. Ethan Cole. My boss, Ethan Cole. The silent, brilliant creative director of the entire agency. The man whose opinion I valued more than almost anyone's, and who I'd always kept a strictly professional, slightly awed distance from. He held a single piece of paper in his hand. A bouquet? No. It looked like a marriage license application. For a long, strange moment, we just stared at each other. The absurdity of it all, me in a wedding dress crying on a park bench and him, my impeccably dressed boss, holding a marriage license looking like he'd just lost his best friend, was almost too much. Caitlyn, he said. His voice was low, calm, a steady anchor in my swirling chaos. It wasn't a question. Ethan, I whispered back, my voice cracking. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just gestured to the space on the bench beside me. May I? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. He sat down, the leather of the bench creaking softly under his weight. He stared at the fountain, mirroring my posture. We sat in silence for another long minute. It should have been excruciatingly awkward, my boss seeing me like this. But it wasn't. It was strangely comfortable. Like we were two survivors of the same shipwreck, just grateful to have found a piece of floating debris to hold on to. Finally he spoke, his gaze still on the water. Her name is Amanda. We were supposed to be in there. He tilted his head towards the clerk's office an hour ago. He let out a short, humorless laugh. She sent me a text this morning. Said she couldn't go through with it. That she'd met someone else. Someone who made her feel alive. He finally turned to look at me, a flicker of raw pain in his eyes before he masked it. 18 months. And I get a text message. The dam inside me finally broke. Not with sobs, but with a strange, choked laugh. Mine didn't even have the decency to text. He just didn't show. I saw him on Instagram with his ex-girlfriend. On his way to who knows where. He looked at me then, really looked at me. He saw the ruined makeup, the desperate grip I had on my clutch, the ridiculous, hopeful dress. And instead of pity, his eyes held something else. A flicker of connection. A shared recognition of an absurd, cruel joke. He looked down at the application in his hand, then back at me. An idea seemed to dawn in his eyes, a crazy, slightly manic light replacing the earlier pain. Caitlyn, he said, his voice dropping lower, more intense. I have a proposition. And you are free to tell me I've lost my mind and walk away. I won't blame you. I just stared at him, too numb to be shocked. What are you going to do now? He asked. Go home? Face the questions, the pity, the I told you so's? I flinched. He'd hit the nail on the head. Me neither, he continued. My family flew in from Seattle. Her family is here. There's a venue full of flowers and a string quartet waiting for us. The humiliation, it's a tidal wave I'm not ready to face. He held up the marriage license application. This is just a piece of paper. A legal contract. It offers tax breaks, health insurance benefits, a shared last name. It offers a shield. My breath caught in my throat. I knew what he was going to say before he said it. We're both here. We're both available. We have a signed, sealed reason not to have to explain ourselves to anyone. We tell them we eloped. That we've been secretly seeing each other for months. It's a story. A good one. It protects us both. He leaned forward, his gaze intense, searching my face. I'm not asking for a real marriage, Caitlyn. I'm asking for a partnership. A practical solution to a disastrous day. We go back in there, we file this, and we walk out as husband and wife. We figure out the details later. What do you say? My mind was reeling. It was insane. It was the craziest thing I'd ever heard. Marry my boss? A man I barely knew outside of quarterly reports and creative briefs? It was a recipe for disaster. But then I thought about Chloe's sympathetic face, my mother's tearful voice, the endless loop of explanations and justifications. I thought about Mike probably laughing with Emily in some trendy downtown bar, not giving me a second thought. I thought about walking into the office on Monday, the girl who got left at the altar, an object of pity and gossip. This was different. This was power. It was control. It was taking the narrative back. I looked at Ethan Cole. Really looked at him. He wasn't just my boss. He was a good man. Quiet, fair, brilliant. I'd always felt safe in his presence, respected. Could this be any crazier than marrying Mike, a man who'd turned out to be a stranger? What are the terms? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. A flicker of relief, quickly hidden, crossed his face. We keep our own lives. Separate bedrooms, of course. We present a united front in public. After a year, if we both want out, we get a quiet, amicable divorce. No hard feelings. In the meantime, we have each other's backs. He extended his hand, his expression solemn. I looked at his hand, then at the clerk's office building in the distance. I thought about walking back into that sterile lobby, not as the jilted bride but as a bride. A bride with a story. A secret. A powerful, handsome, brilliant husband. My hand moved before my brain could fully catch up. I placed it in his. His grip was warm, firm, and steady. Okay, I whispered. Let's do it. He stood, pulling me gently to my feet. For the first time, I noticed he was still holding the single pathetic flower he must have had for Amanda. He looked at it, a flicker of the morning's pain crossing his features, then calmly placed it on the bench. He straightened his tie, looked at me, and offered his arm. Ready, Mrs. Cole. The name sounded strange. Foreign. But not entirely unpleasant. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and took his arm. Ready. And so, on the day I was supposed to marry the man who broke my heart, I walked back into the city clerk's office on the arm of a man I barely knew and became his wife. The first thing I noticed when I woke up was the smell. Not my usual scent of lavender and vanilla from the candle on my nightstand, but something else, clean, masculine, with hints of sandalwood and coffee. It took me a disoriented moment to remember where I was, and then it all came crashing back. I was in Ethan Cole's guest room. No, not Ethan Cole's. Ethan's. My husband's. The words still felt foreign, a stone in my mouth that I couldn't quite swallow. I lay still, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, replaying the previous day like a film reel I couldn't stop. The walk back into the clerk's office. The numbness as we filled out the paperwork. The flash of the clerk's bored expression as she pronounced us married. The strange, surreal moment when Ethan had leaned over and pressed the lightest, most chaste kiss to my cheek for the benefit of the security camera he'd whispered afterward. A marriage needed proof. We'd gone to a quiet bar after, neither of us ready to face our families or our phones. We'd sat in a dimly lit booth and talked for hours. Not about work, not about the marriage, but about everything else. He told me about growing up in Seattle, the youngest of 3 boys, always the quiet one who preferred sketching in his notebook to playing sports. I told him about Ohio, about my dad's auto repair shop, about the scholarship that had brought me to California and never letting me go back. It was strange, discovering the person behind the professional facade. The Ethan Cole I knew from the office was reserved, intimidating, brilliant. The Ethan Cole who bought me a second glass of wine and admitted he'd never learned to ride a bike was someone else entirely. Human. Accessible. Even kind. By the time we'd stumbled back to his place, my apartment felt too small, too full of Mike's ghost, he'd argued, and I'd been too tired to resist. It was after midnight. He'd shown me to the guest room, handed me a t-shirt to sleep in, and said goodnight with the awkward formality of a first date. And now it was morning. Married morning. I padded out of the room, still in his t-shirt, a soft, faded thing from some university I didn't recognize, and followed the smell of coffee. The apartment was beautiful, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It looked like a magazine spread. Nothing like my cozy, cluttered little place with its thrift store furniture and piles of books. Ethan was in the kitchen, standing at the counter in sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking impossibly put together even in casual clothes. He was reading something on his phone, a cup of coffee in his hand. When he heard me, he looked up, and for just a second, something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or uncertainty. "Good morning," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Coffee? Please." He poured me a cup and slid it across the island toward me. I wrapped my hands around it, grateful for the warmth, for something to hold on to. "I've been thinking," he said, leaning against the counter, "about logistics." My stomach tightened. Logistics. Right. This was a business arrangement. "We should probably tell people we've been seeing each other for a while," he continued, quietly, "that we wanted to keep it private because of work. It explains why no one knew." I nodded, sipping my coffee. It was perfect, of course. Strong but not bitter, with just a hint of cream. "That works," I said. "Though Chloe, my best friend, she's going to kill me for not telling her." "I have a sister," he said, a small smile playing at his lips. "I understand the fury of betrayed women." It was the first real smile I'd seen from him, and it transformed his face. Made him look younger. Less like the intimidating creative director and more like, well, like a husband. My husband. The thought sent a strange flutter through my chest that I quickly suppressed. "What about work?" I asked. "I report to Jessica in accounts, but you're, You." He considered this. "We keep it professional at the office." "Completely. No one needs to know the details of our personal lives. But if anyone asks, we don't deny it. The story is we eloped because we didn't want a big production. People will gossip for a week and then something else will happen." It was so practical, so logical. So perfectly Ethan. "And the other thing," he said, his voice dropping slightly. "Mike. And Amanda. We should probably address that." The names landed like stones in the quiet kitchen. I'd almost forgotten, in the strange bubble of the past 12 hours, that we weren't the only ones with baggage. He had his own heartbreak, his own betrayal. "What about them?" I asked. "If they reach out, and they will eventually, we present a united front. We're married. We're happy. There's nothing they can do about it." There was something in his voice when he said it. A hardness that I hadn't heard before. This wasn't just about saving face for him. This was about pride. About not letting Amanda see that she'd hurt him. I understood that completely. "United front," I agreed. "Happy couple." "Got it." He nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Good. Now, breakfast." I make a mean omelet. The first test came sooner than I expected. I'd gone back to my apartment that afternoon to pack some things. Ethan had insisted I stay at his place for a while, at least until the dust settled, and I hadn't argued. My apartment felt wrong now. Every corner held a memory of Mike. The dent in the couch where he always Saturday. The mug he preferred in the cabinet. The photo of us on a weekend trip to Santa Barbara that I'd left on the bookshelf, his arm around me, both of us smiling at someone else's camera. I was shoving clothes into a bag when the doorbell rang. I shouldn't have answered it. Every self-respecting woman in a movie knows not to answer the door when she's emotionally vulnerable. But I wasn't thinking clearly. I was running on adrenaline and shock and the strange unreality of the past 24 hours. I opened the door and there he was. Mike looked terrible. That was my first thought before the anger could kick in. His hair was disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed, his shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. He looked like he hadn't shaved in days. It had been exactly 1 day. "Caitlyn," he breathed, like the sight of me was the answer to his prayers. Thank God. I've been calling, texting, you blocked me. I came by your work, but you weren't there. You came by my work? I interrupted, my voice sharp. It's Saturday, Mike. No one's there. He flinched. I wasn't thinking straight. I need to explain. I should have closed the door. I should have told him to go to hell. But some weak, stupid part of me, the part that had loved him for 2 years, wanted to hear it. Wanted to understand how the man I was going to marry could do what he did. Explain what exactly? I asked, crossing my arms over my chest. Why you stood me up. Why you were with Emily. Why you didn't even have the decency to call. Emily, he said, and even her name on his lips made me sick. She showed up at my apartment that morning. She was hysterical, Caitlyn. Crying. Saying she'd made a terrible mistake leaving me, that she loved me, that she couldn't live without me. I was trying to calm her down, and then Beth saw us and you just, what? Forgot you were supposed to be marrying me in an hour. His face crumpled. I know it looks bad. But I never meant for it to happen. I was going to come. I was going to tell her no, that I was marrying you, but then she started talking about the past, about all the memories, and I got confused. I needed time to think. Time to think, I repeated flatly. At the coffee cart. And then in an Uber. And then where, Mike? Her apartment. Her bed. He had the decency to look ashamed. Nothing happened. I swear. We just talked. Right. You just talked. For 12 hours. On our wedding day. Caitlyn, please. He stepped forward, reaching for my hand. I jerked back like his touch would burn me. I love you. I realized it yesterday after you sent that text. I was sitting there with Emily and all I could think about was you. About the life we were supposed to have. I left her and I came to find you, but you were gone. I stared at him. Really stared. And for the first time I saw him clearly. Not the man I'd loved, not the future I'd imagined. Just a weak, selfish boy who'd panicked when his past showed up and made a choice. A choice that had nothing to do with me. I was at the clerk's office, I said quietly. Waiting. For an hour. I saw you on Instagram laughing with her and I still waited. Because some stupid part of me thought maybe there was an explanation. Maybe Beth had it wrong. Maybe you'd walk through that door any second with flowers and an apology and we'd get married and laugh about this someday. Tears were streaming down his face now. I'm so sorry. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. Just give me a chance. I took a deep breath. And then I smiled. Not a happy smile. A smile of pure, cold satisfaction. There's something you should know, Mike. He looked up, hopeful. Anything. I got married yesterday. The blood drained from his face. What? His name is Ethan Cole. You know him. He's my boss. Actually, now he's my husband. I let that sink in. We've been seeing each other quietly for a while. And yesterday, after you didn't show, we decided we didn't want to wait anymore. We eloped. No. He shook his head violently. No, you're lying. You're trying to hurt me. I don't blame you, but... I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo Ethan and I had taken last night at his insistence. For proof, he'd said. We were at the bar, his arm around me, both of us smiling. If you didn't know the truth, you'd think we were just another happy couple, giddy with new love. Mike stared at the screen. His face crumpled completely. Caitlyn, please. Goodbye, Mike. I stepped back and closed the door. And this time when the tears came, they weren't for him. They were for me. For the girl who'd believed in him. For the 2 years I'd wasted. For the wedding dress hanging in my closet that I'd never wear again. But underneath the grief, something else was stirring. Something that felt almost like freedom. I went back to Ethan's that night with 2 suitcases and a strange sense of anticipation. He was working at the kitchen table when I came in, his laptop open, a sketch pad beside him. He looked up when he heard the door. How'd it go? I dumped my bags by the door and collapsed onto the couch. Mike showed up. His expression sharpened. What did he want? To explain. To apologize. To get me back. I laughed, a hollow sound. I told him about us. Showed him the photo. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Then, how do you feel? It was such a simple question and no one had asked it. Not once. Everyone wanted to know what happened, what Mike did, what I was going to do. No one had asked how I felt. I don't know, I admitted. Relieved, maybe. Angry. Sad. All of it. I looked at him. You. He considered this. The same. Amanda called. Left a voicemail. Said she made a mistake and wanted to talk. What did you do? Deleted it. He said it simply, without drama. There's nothing to talk about. She made her choice. I made mine. The weight of his words hung in the air between us. I made mine. He'd chosen me. A practical choice, maybe. A convenient one. But still. He'd chosen me. Dinner, he asked, standing. I was thinking pasta. Nothing fancy. I followed him into the kitchen, watching as he moved confidently around the space, pulling out ingredients, filling a pot with water. It was so domestic, so ordinary. And yet nothing about this was ordinary. Can I help? I asked. You can chop the tomatoes if you want. We worked side by side in comfortable silence, the way I imagined real couples did. He showed me where everything was, the cutting boards, the knives, the olive oil. His kitchen was immaculate, every drawer perfectly organized. It was almost intimidating. You don't have to stay in the guest room forever, he said suddenly, not looking up from the sauce he was stirring. I mean, if you want. There's a spare room down the hall we could convert into an office for you. Make it feel more like yours. I stopped chopping. You do that. He shrugged a little self-consciously. You live here now. It should feel like home. Not like you're just visiting. Something warm bloomed in my chest. Thank you. That's really thoughtful. He glanced at me, a quick, almost shy look. We're partners in this, Caitlyn. I meant what I said. I've got your back. Later, after we'd eaten and cleaned up together, I sat in the guest room and stared at my reflection in the mirror. Mrs. Cole. Caitlyn Cole. It sounded like someone else. Someone stronger. Someone who hadn't been left at the altar. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I know the truth. You and Ethan Cole aren't a real couple. You think you can fool everyone, but I see through it. This isn't over. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Who sent this? Mike? Emily? Someone else? Before I could decide how to respond, another text came through. This one from Ethan. You awake? I smiled despite myself. Yeah. Everything okay? I looked at the threatening message, then back at his simple, caring question. In the space of 2 days, I'd lost a fiancé and gained a husband. I'd been threatened by someone and checked on by someone else. The contrast was stark. Fine, I wrote back. Just adjusting. Me too. Good night, Caitlyn. Good night, Ethan. I didn't tell him about the message. Not yet. Somewhere deep down I knew this wasn't over. Mike and Emily weren't done with us. But for now, in this strange new life I'd stumbled into, I felt safer than I had in years. And that was something. The first week of married life was a study in careful choreography. Ethan and I developed a rhythm, an unspoken dance of coexistence that felt surprisingly natural given the circumstances. Mornings were the easiest. We'd make coffee together, sometimes eat breakfast side by side at the island, then head off to work separately. He'd take the luxury car, I'd take the subway. At the office, we were professional. distant even. Just another boss and his employee. But at night we'd reconvene. Sometimes we'd cook together, a task that revealed Ethan's hidden competitive streak. He insisted his knife skills were superior. I maintained that anyone could chop an onion if they'd worked in their dad's diner through high school. Other nights we'd order takeout and eat in front of the TV, discovering a shared love of terrible reality shows that seemed completely at odds with his sophisticated exterior. "You're telling me you actually watch Vanderpump Rules?" I'd asked one night, genuinely shocked. He'd had the grace to look embarrassed. "It's compelling television." We were learning each other. The small things, he couldn't fall asleep without the window cracked, even in winter. I talked in my sleep apparently, though he refused to tell me what I said. He was meticulously organized, his side of the bathroom a study in geometric precision. I was chaos personified, my products spilling across every available surface. Somehow we made it work. The office was another matter. Monday morning had been a gauntlet. I'd walked into a storm of whispers and stares, my new last name Cole already circulating through the gossip mill. By noon, everyone knew. By 2, the theories had started. "Did you know?" Chloe demanded, cornering me in the break room. Her arms were crossed, her expression a mix of hurt and fury. About her and Ethan? Before any of this, Chloe had been my best friend since orientation at UCLA, the sister I'd never had. She'd held my hair back during freshman parties, celebrated my first promotion, listened to months of wedding planning with genuine enthusiasm. And I'd lied to her. Or at least I hadn't told her the truth. "Chloe, I can explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been secretly dating our boss for months and didn't trust me enough to tell me." Her eyes glistened. "I thought we told each other everything." The guilt was suffocating. But the story was the story, and Ethan and I had agreed to stick to it. "It wasn't like that," I said, reaching for her arm. She let me take it, which I took as a good sign. It wasn't planned. It just happened. And we wanted to keep it quiet because of work. You know how HR gets about inter-office relationships. She sniffled, wiping at her eyes with the back of her hand. "So you just eloped? Without telling anyone? Without your best friend there?" I thought about the sterile clerk's office, the bored clock, the complete absence of romance or joy. It was impulsive. And fast. And probably crazy. But Chloe, it felt right. That part, at least, wasn't entirely a lie. In the strange, surreal days since the wedding, something had shifted. The arrangement that had seemed so purely practical was developing unexpected dimensions. Ethan wasn't just my husband on paper. He was becoming something else. A friend. A confidant. A presence I found myself looking forward to at the end of each day. Chloe studied my face, searching for something. Whatever she found must have satisfied her because her expression softened. "You're really happy?" "With him." I thought about Ethan's quiet thoughtfulness. The way he'd started keeping my favorite tea in the cabinet without being asked. How he'd noticed I was cold one night and wordlessly adjusted the thermostat. The small, consistent kindnesses that Mike had never managed in 2 years. "Yeah," I said, and was surprised to find I meant it. "I really am." The first crack in our careful facade came 2 weeks into our arrangement. I was leaving the office late, the building mostly empty, when I heard footsteps behind me in the parking garage. I turned, expecting a security guard or another late worker, and found myself face to face with Emily White. She was smaller than I remembered from the Instagram photos. Petite and perfectly put together in a cream sheath dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her blonde hair was sleek, her makeup flawless. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine, and I hated her instantly. "Caitlyn." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm glad I caught you." "What do you want, Emily?" She tilted her head, studying me like I was a specimen under glass. "I wanted to meet you properly. The woman who stole Mike away from me." I laughed, I couldn't help it. The sheer audacity. I didn't steal anyone. You had him. You gave him up. And then you showed up on our wedding day and he made his choice. That's on him. That's on you. None of that is on me. Her smile tightened. Interesting perspective. From what I hear, you didn't waste any time moving on. Ethan Cole. She said his name like it was a punchline. Impressive. Did you plan it that way? Trading up. The accusation hung in the air between us. I felt my hands curl into fists at my sides. My marriage is none of your business. Oh, but it is. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something floral and expensive. You see, I know Ethan. We have history. Mutual friends. And according to those friends, he was supposed to get married the same day you were. To someone named Amanda. Funny coincidence, don't you think? My heart stuttered, but I kept my face neutral. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. You and Ethan didn't know each other. Not like that. And suddenly, on the same day you both get left at the altar, you're married. She laughed, a light, cruel sound. Please. I wasn't born yesterday. I should have walked away. I should have ended the conversation right there. But something in me, pride maybe, or the need to protect what Ethan and I were building, made me stand my ground. You don't know anything about me and Ethan. I know a sham when I see one. She circled me slowly and I felt like prey. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to end this little charade. You're going to tell everyone the truth. And then Mike and I can move on with our lives without your drama hanging over us. The laugh that escaped me was genuine. You want me to end my marriage so you and Mike can feel better about cheating on me? Is that what you're asking? She flushed, a pretty pink rising in her cheeks. It's not cheating when they were meant to be together. They were together. You left him, remember? He was mine. And you couldn't stand it. The realization hit me as I said it, clear and sharp. That's what this is about. Not love. Not destiny. Just jealousy. You saw him happy with someone else and you couldn't let it go. For a split second, the mask slipped. I saw something ugly flash in her eyes before she controlled it. You don't know what you're talking about. I know enough. I stepped around her, heading for my car. Stay away from me, Emily. Stay away from my husband. Whatever you think you know, whatever game you're playing, it's over. We're done here. I got in my car and drove away, my hands shaking on the wheel. But even as I put distance between us, I knew it wasn't over. Emily wasn't the type to give up. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a small, terrified voice whispered, she knows. She knows it's fake. I told Ethan that night, curled on the couch with a glass of wine still shaken from the encounter. She knows, I finished. About us. About the timing. She's going to cause trouble. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, staring at the dark city beyond the windows. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm. Controlled. Let her. I stared at him. What? Let her cause trouble. Let her tell everyone her theory. What's she going to say? That we got married for convenience after being dumped? That's not exactly scandalous. It's actually kind of romantic. He turned to look at me, and there was something in his eyes I couldn't quite read. Two people, both hurt, finding each other at exactly the right moment. That's a good story, Caitlyn. But it's not true, I whispered. Does it matter? He moved closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. We're making it true. Every day. The way we live, the way we care about each other, that's real. That's not pretend. My heart was pounding. I didn't know if it was the wine or the moment or the intensity of his gaze, but something had shifted. The air between us felt charged, electric. Ethan. Mike came to see me today. The words landed like stones in the quiet room. I jerked back. What? He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of agitation. He showed up at my office. Wanted to talk about you. About us. A pause. He said he still loves you. That he made a terrible mistake. That he wants you back. The anger that flooded me was hot and immediate. He has no right. I know. Ethan's voice was gentle. I told him that. I told him you're my wife and I'm not giving you up. Not to him. Not to anyone. The words hung in the air between us. Not giving you up. It sounded like more than a business arrangement. It sounded like, Caitlyn. He said my name softly, carefully. I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you before we did this. My stomach clenched. What? He took a breath, and when he spoke, the words came out in a rush, like he'd been holding them back for too long. I didn't just happen to be at that park that day. I knew you'd be there. I stared at him, uncomprehending. What? I saw you leave the office. You were upset, I could tell, even from across the street. And then I saw Mike's Instagram story. Beth had tagged him and I saw the photo, so you weren't with him, and I had a feeling. A bad feeling. So I followed you. The confession landed like a physical blow. You followed me. I know how that sounds. I know it's crazy. But Caitlyn, I couldn't let you go through that alone. He leaned forward, his expression intense. And when I saw you on that bench looking so broken, something in me just broke too. Not because of Amanda. Because of you. Because seeing you hurt was worse than anything I was feeling. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know what to think. This changed everything. The chance encounter, the proposal, none of it was chance at all. Why? I finally managed. Why would you do that? He held my gaze, and in his eyes I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Something that had maybe always been there, hidden beneath the professional surface. Because I've been in love with you for 3 years, he said quietly. And I was too much of a coward to ever tell you. The confession hung in the air between us, shimmering and fragile. I couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. 3 years. He'd loved me for 3 years and I'd never known. I'm not telling you this to pressure you, he continued, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. I'm telling you because you deserve the truth. The marriage started as convenience for me too. I wasn't lying about Amanda. But it wasn't just convenience. It was an opportunity. A chance to have you in my life, even if it wasn't real. Even if you never felt the same. Ethan. His name came out as barely a whisper. You don't have to say anything. I don't expect anything. If you want out, if this changes things, I understand. But I needed you to know. He stood, shoving his hands in his pockets. I'll give you space. We can talk tomorrow or whenever you're ready. He walked toward his room and I watched him go, my mind reeling. The quiet kindness, the careful attention, the way he'd built a life around me without asking for anything in return, it all made sense now. He hadn't just been a convenient partner. He'd been waiting. Hoping. Ethan, wait. He stopped, his back to me. I stood, my legs unsteady. Crossed the room until I was standing behind him, close enough to touch. Look at me. He turned. His face was carefully controlled, but I could see the fear underneath. The hope he was trying to hide. You followed me to the park, I said slowly. You proposed marriage to a crying woman in a wedding dress. You let me move into your home, took care of me, made me coffee every morning and pretended it was just practical. And all that time, he confirmed softly. I thought about the past weeks. The way my days had started to revolve around coming home to him. The way his presence had become a comfort, then a joy, then something I couldn't imagine living without. The way I'd started to notice the little things, the shape of his hands, the sound of his laugh, the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. I don't know what I feel, I admitted. This is all so fast, so complicated. Mike, Emily, the marriage, it's a lot. I know. But I know I don't want to leave. I know I feel safe with you. Happy. And I know that when you said you weren't giving me up, something in me. I pressed a hand to my chest, over my racing heart. Something in me felt glad. Hope flickered in his eyes. Caitlyn. I'm not saying I'm there yet. I'm not saying I love you. But I'm saying, I want to find out. I want to see where this goes. For real. Not pretend. He reached for me then, slowly, giving me time to pull away. I didn't. His hands cupped my face, gentle and warm, and when he kissed me, it was nothing like the chaste peck in the clerk's office. It was soft and questioning and full of promise. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathless. Okay, he said, a smile spreading across his face, the real one, the one that transformed him. Okay. We'll figure it out. Together. And for the first time since that terrible, wonderful day at the clerk's office, I believed we would. The morning after Ethan's confession, I woke up in his arms. Somewhere in the night, after too much wine and too many conversations about everything and nothing, we'd migrated from the couch to his bed. Not for anything more than sleep, just the simple, profound intimacy of holding someone close. I drifted off with my head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heart, and for the first time in weeks I hadn't dreamed about Mike at all. Now, in the pale gray light of early dawn, I watched him sleep. His face was relaxed, younger-looking without the careful control he wore during waking hours. One arm was wrapped around me, possessive even in unconsciousness. 3 years, he'd said. He'd loved me for 3 years and I'd never known. How had I been so blind? I thought back to all the moments I'd missed. The way he always remembered details from our conversations, my mom's birthday, my favorite coffee order, the name of my childhood cat. The way he'd find excuses to stop by my desk, just for a moment, just to ask a question he probably already knew the answer to. The way he'd looked at me across conference rooms and I'd been too focused on Mike to notice. Mike. The name that had once meant everything now felt like a stranger's. 2 weeks of marriage to Ethan had done what 2 years with Mike never could, shown me what real care looked like. Not grand gestures or passionate declarations, but quiet consistency. Small kindnesses. The choice, made fresh every day, to put someone else's needs alongside your own. Ethan's eyes opened, and for a moment we just looked at each other. Then he smiled, slow and sleepy, and my heart did something complicated in my chest. Hey, he murmured. Hey yourself. This is nice. His arm tightened around me. Waking up with you. I could get used to this. Me too. The admission came easier than I expected. We lay there as the room grew brighter, talking about nothing important. Weekend plans. A new restaurant he wanted to try. The ridiculous reality show we'd been watching. It was so ordinary, so domestic, and yet it felt revolutionary. This was what it was supposed to feel like. This ease. This comfort. This quiet joy in simply being together. We should probably tell people, I said eventually. For real, I mean. Not the fake story. The truth. Ethan was quiet for a moment. Are you sure? It's a lot to explain. And your family. My family will be thrilled I'm not actually pining over Mike. I propped myself up on one elbow to look at him. And yours. He considered this. My mom will be suspicious. She's always said I work too much, that I'd never find someone if I didn't put myself out there. Showing up married out of nowhere is exactly the kind of dramatic move she'd expect from me. Does she know about Amanda? She knew. Liked her, actually. That's going to be awkward. He pulled me closer, tucking my head under his chin. But she'll come around. Once she meets you, she'll come around. The confidence in his voice warmed me. He believed in us. In me. It was terrifying and wonderful all at once. We decided to start with Chloe. She came over that evening, armed with wine and suspicion. I'd told her I had something important to tell her, and her imagination had clearly run wild based on the expression on her face when I opened the door. "Okay, if you're moving to another country, I need advance warning so I can mentally prepare," she announced, pushing past me into the apartment. "Also, if you're pregnant, I'm going to need more wine than this bottle contains." Not pregnant. Not moving. I took the wine and led her to the living room where Ethan was waiting. He stood when we entered, ever the gentleman. "Chloe." He extended his hand. "Good to see you again." She shook it, but her eyes were on me, sharp and assessing. "Okay. Spill. What's going on?" "We Saturday." Ethan took my hand, a small gesture but significant. Chloe's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. "Remember how I told you we'd been secretly dating?" I began. That wasn't entirely true. Her expression shifted through several emotions: confusion, hurt, wariness, before settling on a carefully neutral waiting. "Go on." So I did. I told her everything. The real story. The park, the shared heartbreak, the impulsive decision. The weeks of figuring it out, of building something real from a fake foundation. And finally, last night, the confession. The truth about Ethan's 3 years of silent love. When I finished, Chloe was quiet for a long moment. She looked between us, her gaze lingering on our joined hands, on the way Ethan's thumb traced slow circles on my skin. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that you married your boss on a whim, 2 hours after your fiancé stood you up, and it's actually working." I know how it sounds. It sounds insane. But she was smiling. It sounds completely, utterly insane. And also kind of perfect. She lunged forward, pulling me into a hug. "You crazy idiot. I can't believe you didn't tell me." "I'm sorry. We had to be sure first. And we had to figure out what we were." She pulled back, looking at Ethan with new eyes. 3 years here? That's dedication." "More like stupidity," he admitted. "I should have said something long before." "Yeah, you should have." But she was grinning. "But I guess you made up for it with the dramatic park proposal." Points for presentation. Relief flooded through me. Chloe's approval mattered more than I'd realized. She was my family in California, my touchstone. Having her blessing made everything feel more real. More possible. "Okay," she said, grabbing the wine bottle. "We're going to need to discuss logistics. How are you handling work? What's the living situation? Have you told HR? And more importantly, what are we doing about Mike and Emily, because I saw them at Whole Foods yesterday and they looked smug enough that I wanted to key their car." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "You didn't." "I didn't. But I thought about it." She poured 3 glasses with practiced efficiency. "Seriously, though, they're not going to let this go. Emily's been spreading rumors at work. Nothing overt, just little comments. Implying things." Ethan's jaw tightened. "What kind of things?" "Nothing she can't deny. Just, oh, isn't it interesting how fast they moved, and I heard from a friend that Ethan was supposed to marry someone else." Just enough to plant seeds of doubt. I thought about Emily's confrontation in the parking garage, her knowing smile. She wasn't done with us. Not by a long shot. "We need to get ahead of this," I said, "before she can do real damage." Ethan nodded. "We should make it official. Public. A real event, not just paperwork. Something that shows we're not hiding anything." "A party," Chloe said, her eyes lighting up. "An engagement party/wedding reception. You invite everyone, co-workers, friends, family. You make a big production of being in love. And you let Emily and Mike see exactly what they're missing." It was perfect. And terrifying. "When?" I asked. "Soon. Next weekend. I can plan it, you know I love this stuff. We'll do it here, keep it intimate but impressive. Good food, good wine, good music. By the time we're done, everyone will be so busy being jealous of your love story they won't remember what Emily was whispering." I looked at Ethan. He looked at me, and together we said, let's do it. The next week was a blur of preparation. Chloe threw herself into planning with the intensity of a general preparing for battle. Guest lists were curated, menus selected, flowers ordered. She coordinated with Ethan on every detail, commandeering his living room as command central and reducing him to a delivery man for various party supplies. I focused on work, trying to maintain normalcy while my personal life spiraled into increasingly public territory. The office gossip had intensified. Emily's campaign was working. I caught whispers in the hallways, looks that lingered too long. People were speculating, wondering, judging. The worst was Jessica, my direct supervisor. She called me into her office on Thursday, her expression carefully neutral. Caitlyn, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. My stomach dropped. Of course. Your relationship with Ethan Cole. How long has it been going on? I'd prepared for this. Several months. We kept it quiet because of work. Several months. She wrote something on the pad in front of her. And you got married on the 15th. Yes. The same day your previous relationship ended. The question hung in the air. This was it, the moment Emily had been building toward. Official scrutiny. Jessica, I know how it looks. But the timing was coincidental. Mike and I had been having problems for a while. His reunion with Emily was just the final straw. Ethan was there for me when I needed someone. We'd been growing closer for months, and that day just crystallized things. She studied me for a long moment. HR is going to want to interview you. Both of you. Separately. It's standard procedure when there's a relationship between a senior executive and a manager. They need to ensure there was no favoritism, no coercion. I understand. And Caitlyn. Her expression softened just slightly. For what it's worth, I've seen the way he looks at you. In meetings, when you're presenting. I always wondered if he knew he was doing it. I blinked. What do you mean? She smiled, a real smile this time. He lights up. Completely transforms. For someone so controlled, he's remarkably transparent when it comes to you. I figured something was going on months ago. I just assumed you'd tell me when you were ready. Relief washed over me. You're not upset. I'm your supervisor, not your mother. As long as your work doesn't suffer and there's no conflict of interest, what you do outside the office is your business. She stood, signaling the meeting was over. Now go prep for the Henderson pitch. That's your actual priority. The party was Saturday night. By 7 o'clock, Ethan's apartment, our apartment, I was slowly learning to say, had been transformed. String lights draped across the balcony, flowers in every corner, a small band setting up near the windows. Chloe had outdone herself. It looked like something from a magazine, elegant and intimate and undeniably romantic. I stood in front of the bedroom mirror, second-guessing everything. The dress was new, Chloe had insisted, a deep green that brought out the gold in my eyes. My hair was down, softer than my usual work style. I looked like someone's wife. Someone's beloved. The knock on the door made me jump. Come in. Ethan entered, already dressed in a dark suit that fit him perfectly. He stopped when he saw me, and the expression on his face, wonder, disbelief, naked adoration, made my breath catch. You're beautiful, he said simply. Thank you. You clean up okay yourself. He crossed the room, stopping just in front of me. His hands found mine, warm and familiar. Are you ready for this? We can still cancel. Say I got food poisoning. And face Chloe's wrath? Absolutely not. I squeezed his hands. I'm ready. Nervous but ready. Me too. He lifted one hand to my face, cupping my cheek with impossible gentleness. Whatever happens tonight, whatever they say or think, I need you to know something. This isn't pretend for me. It hasn't been for a long time. I know. I turned my head, pressing a kiss to his palm. It's not pretend for me either. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When we pulled apart, we were both smiling. Together, he asked. Together. We walked out to face our guests hand in hand. The party was a triumph. People arrived in waves, co-workers, friends, a few neighbors. Ethan's parents flew in from Seattle, his mother embracing me with surprising warmth. My mom video called from Ohio, tearfully happy, demanding to see everything. Even Jessica came, bringing a bottle of champagne and a knowing smile. We moved through the crowd together, telling our story, the edited version with just enough truth to feel real. The secret dating, the impulsive elopement, the joy of finally being able to share our happiness. People believed it. Why wouldn't they? The way Ethan looked at me, the way I reached for him without thinking, none of it was fake. And then, halfway through the evening, the door opened and Mike walked in. He wasn't invited. Neither was Emily. But there they were, dressed for an evening out, looking around the party like they'd accidentally stumbled into enemy territory. Which, I suppose, they had. The room quieted. Conversations faltered. Everyone knew the story, or at least everyone knew enough. The jilted fiancé. The other woman. The dramatic wedding day. And now the confrontation. Ethan's hand found mine, squeezing tight. "I've got this," he murmured. But before he could move, Mike was crossing the room toward us. Emily followed, her expression a careful mask of polite interest. "Caitlyn." Mike's voice was too loud in the suddenly quiet space. "Congratulations. We heard about your party and wanted to wish you well." It was such a blatant lie that someone actually laughed. "Chloe, probably." "Thank you." My voice was steady, calm. "I didn't realize we'd sent you an invitation." "You didn't. But we're adults, right? We can be happy for each other." He looked at Ethan and I saw something flicker in his eyes, jealousy maybe, or regret. "You're a lucky man." "I know." Ethan's arm slid around my waist, pulling me close. "I don't need anyone to tell me that." Emily's smile was brittle. "It's so interesting, isn't it? How quickly things worked out for you both. Almost like it was meant to be." The implication was clear. The whispers started again, soft but audible. I could have let it go. Could have smiled and thanked them and let them slink away. But something in me, maybe the part that was tired of being a victim, tired of letting other people write my story, snapped. "You know what, Emily? You're right. It was meant to be." I stepped forward, still holding Ethan's hand. "But not the way you're implying. See, Ethan loved me for 3 years before we ever got married. 3 years of watching me date the wrong person, of being a good friend and a supportive boss, of never once pushing for more than I was willing to give. That's not convenience. That's not a rebound. That's love. Real love. The kind you and Mike wouldn't recognize if it hit you in the face." The room was utterly silent. Emily's face had gone pale. "And you," I continued, turning to Mike. "You had me. For 2 years you had someone who would have done anything for you. And you threw it away because your ex-girlfriend got jealous and decided she wanted you back. That's on you. That's your loss. But I'm done letting you make it my problem." I lifted our joined hands, showing off the simple bands we'd bought at a jewelry store the day after the wedding. "This is real. We're real. And nothing you say or do is going to change that. So you can stay, you can have a drink, you can pretend to be happy for us. But if you're here to cause trouble, you can leave. Right now." For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, someone started clapping. Chloe, of course. And then someone else joined in. And another. Within seconds, the room was full of applause. Mike's face was a study in humiliation. Emily looked like she'd swallowed something poisonous. Without another word, they turned and walked out, the door closing behind them with a definitive click. Ethan pulled me into his arms, his lips against my ear. "That was incredible." "I'm tired of being afraid of them," I whispered back. "Tired of letting them have power over us." "They don't." Not anymore. He pulled back to look at me, his eyes bright with something that looked suspiciously like tears. I love you, Caitlyn Cole. I've loved you for so long I don't remember what it felt like before. I love you too. The words came easily, naturally, like they'd been waiting for this moment all along. I love you and I'm so glad I married you. He kissed me then, right there in front of everyone, and the applause swelled around us like music. When we finally pulled apart, laughing and breathless, Chloe was waving a bottle of champagne in the air. To the Coles, she shouted. May they always be this disgustingly happy. And we were. From that moment on, we were. The aftermath of the party was both liberating and exhausting. 4 days, my phone buzzed constantly, messages of support from coworkers, curious questions from acquaintances who'd heard about the confrontation, and a surprising number of I always knew they were terrible notes from people who'd apparently been waiting for permission to share their own Mike and Emily horror stories. The tide had turned. The whispers that once questioned our marriage now celebrated it, and Emily's carefully cultivated social standing crumbled with astonishing speed. Chloe compiled a highlight reel of the fallout with the glee of a general surveying a defeated enemy. Emily had been uninvited from 3 group lunches. Mike's department was quietly restructuring, leaving his position uncertain. A group of women from accounting had started a Caitlyn's Army group chat dedicated to exposing Emily's past manipulations, which I had to politely ask them to dial back. I don't want to destroy them, I told Chloe over coffee. I just want them to leave us alone. Sweetie, they had their chance to leave you alone. They showed up at your party. She stirred her latte with aggressive satisfaction. This is consequences. There's a difference. She wasn't wrong. But part of me, the part that had loved Mike, the part that remembered the good times before everything fell apart, couldn't quite revel in his humiliation. He'd hurt me, yes. Betrayed me in the worst way. But watching him unravel felt less like justice and more like watching a car crash in slow motion. Ethan noticed my ambivalence. Of course he did. He noticed everything. You're feeling sorry for him, he said one night, finding me on the balcony staring at the city lights. Not sorry. Just. I struggled to find the words. Complicated. He leaned against the railing beside me, close enough that I could feel his warmth. It's okay to have complicated feelings. You loved him once. That doesn't disappear overnight. I don't love him now. I know. He was quiet for a moment. But you're a good person, Caitlyn. You feel things deeply. That's one of the things I love about you. It's also why this is harder for you than it is for me. I turned to look at him. You don't feel anything? For Amanda. Something flickered in his eyes, old pain quickly masked. I felt plenty. For a long time. But somewhere along the way, I realized I was more in love with the idea of her than with who she actually was. She was safe. Predictable. She fit the life I thought I wanted. He reached for my hand. Then you walked into that conference room 3 years ago with a terrible presentation and more passion than I'd seen in years, and nothing felt safe or predictable anymore. I laughed. My presentation was terrible. Objectively awful. You'd missed half the key metrics and your design sense was questionable at best. He smiled, softening the critique. But you believed in it so completely. You argued with me, your boss, for 20 minutes about why your approach was better. And by the end, I'd forgotten what my original point was. I just wanted to watch you keep talking. The memory warmed me. I remembered that meeting, my first big presentation, my terror at presenting to the creative director, the way his quiet intensity had both intimidated and energized me. I'd gone home that night convinced I'd been too aggressive, too passionate. Instead, he'd been falling in love with me. 3 years, I murmured. That's such a long time to wait. I'd have waited longer. He said it simply, like a fact. I'd have waited forever if that's what it took. I kissed him then, standing on the balcony with the city spread out below us, and tried to let the kiss convey everything I couldn't quite put into words. Gratitude. Wonder. The terrifying, exhilarating realization that I was falling in love with him too, not cautiously, not gradually, but completely and irreversibly. The peace lasted exactly 2 more weeks. It ended on a Tuesday with an email. I was at work, buried in spreadsheets, when a message popped into my inbox from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was blank. The body contained a single sentence. You should know what your husband was doing while you were planning your wedding. Attached was a video file. My first instinct was to delete it. Ignore it. Let whoever sent it, Emily probably, or one of her remaining allies, stew in their own bitterness. But curiosity is a powerful thing and fear is stronger. I opened the attachment. The video was grainy, clearly taken on a phone. It showed a restaurant patio, the kind of trendy place with string lights and expensive cocktails. The camera panned across the tables before settling on one in particular. And there, sitting across from each other, were Ethan and Amanda. They weren't touching. They weren't even talking, just sitting with half-empty glasses between them. But the timestamp in the corner of the video told the story the images couldn't. It was dated 3 days before our wedding. 3 days before Ethan proposed in the park. 3 days before everything changed. I watched the whole minute-long clip, my heart pounding. At the end, Amanda reached across the table and touched Ethan's hand. He didn't pull away. Then the video cut off. I don't remember closing my office door. I don't remember calling Chloe. I just remember the numbness, the strange detachment of seeing evidence that the ground beneath me wasn't as solid as I'd believed. Chloe arrived within 20 minutes, took one look at my face and closed the door behind her. What happened? I showed her the video. She watched it in silence, then watched it again. When she looked up, her expression was carefully neutral. Okay. Talk to me. What are you thinking? I'm thinking he lied to me. My voice was flat, hollow. He said he was done with her. He said he deleted her messages. And 3 days before we got married, he was having drinks with her. Having drinks. Not sleeping with her. Not declaring undying love. Having drinks. Chloe set the phone down carefully. There's a difference. Is there? He hid it. He didn't tell me. If I hadn't gotten this video, I'd never know. Which means whoever sent it wants you to react exactly like this. She leaned forward, her gaze intense. Caitlyn, think. Who benefits from you doubting Ethan? Who wants to drive a wedge between you? Emily's face flashed through my mind. Her knowing smile, her whispered insinuations. Of course. Of course this was her. But knowing the source didn't change the facts. Ethan had met with Amanda. He'd hidden it. And now I had to decide what that meant. I confronted him that night. He was working at the kitchen table when I came in, the same position he'd been in that first night I'd moved in. But everything else had changed, and I didn't know if it had changed for the better or worse. We need to talk. He looked up, immediately alert. My tone must have given me away. What's wrong? I pulled up the video on my phone and set it in front of him. Watched his face as it played. Saw the moment recognition dawned, followed by something I couldn't quite read. Guilt? Fear? Regret? When was this? I asked, my voice steady despite the shaking in my hands. 3 days before the wedding. He didn't try to deny it. Didn't make excuses. Just stated the fact quietly and clearly. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of agitation. Because I didn't want you to think. He stopped, took a breath, started again. She called me that morning. Said she needed closure. Said she couldn't move on without one conversation. I told myself it was the right thing to do, the mature thing. That I owed her that much after 18 months together. And we talked. For about an hour. She asked if there was any chance for us. I said no. She asked if I loved someone else. I said yes. He met my eyes, and in his I saw nothing but truth. I told her about you, Caitlyn. Not the fake marriage that hadn't happened yet. I told her that I'd been in love with you for years, that I'd wasted too much time being afraid, that I was finally going to do something about it. She cried. I felt terrible. And then I went home. The words landed between us, heavy and fragile. Part of me wanted to believe him completely. Part of me, the part Mike had damaged, whispered that this was exactly what a liar would say. She touched your hand. He blinked. What? At the end of the video. She touched your hand. You didn't pull away. For the first time, something like frustration crossed his face. She was crying. She reached for me. I froze. It lasted 3 seconds and then I left. If I'd known someone was filming, maybe I'd have handled it differently. But I didn't. I just tried to be kind to someone I'd once loved, even though she'd hurt me. Is that really a crime? I wanted it to be simple. Wanted him to have done something unforgivable so I could feel justified in my heart. But life wasn't simple and people weren't villains or heroes, they were just people, making complicated choices in complicated circumstances. Why didn't you tell me? I asked again, and this time my voice cracked. He stood, crossing the space between us. Reached for my hands and I let him take them. Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd think exactly what you're thinking now. Afraid that after everything with Mike, you wouldn't trust anyone who'd had contact with an ex, afraid that I'd lose you before I ever really had you. His grip tightened. I should have told you. I know that now. I'm sorry, Caitlyn. I'm so sorry. I looked at him, really looked. At the fear in his eyes, the vulnerability he so rarely showed. At the man who'd loved me for 3 years without asking for anything in return. At the husband who made me coffee every morning and held me every night and had never, in all the weeks we'd been together, given me any real reason to doubt him. I believe you, I said slowly. I believe you didn't mean anything by it. And I understand why you didn't tell me. I took a breath. But you can't hide things from me, Ethan. Not ever. If we're going to do this, really do this for real, we have to be honest about everything. Even the hard stuff. Especially the hard stuff. Agreed. He pulled me close, his arms wrapping around me like he was afraid I'd disappear. No more secrets. I promise. I held him tight, breathing in his familiar scent, letting his warmth chase away the cold that had settled in my chest. But even as I relaxed into his embrace, a small part of me remained alert. Watching. Waiting. Trust, I was learning, wasn't a switch you flipped. It was a muscle you exercised. And mine had atrophied after years with the wrong person. The next morning, I did something I probably shouldn't have. I called Emily. Not to confront her, I knew better than to give her that satisfaction. But to understand. To find out what she really wanted, and why she was so invested in destroying something that had nothing to do with her. She agreed to meet, surprising us both. We chose a neutral location, a coffee shop near my office, public enough to feel safe, anonymous enough to talk freely. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with a latte and an expression I couldn't quite read. Without her usual armor of perfect makeup and calculated smiles, she looked almost ordinary. Almost human. You came, she said as I sat down. You asked. I didn't order anything. Didn't want to pretend this was social. Why, Emily? Why all of this? The video, the rumors, the campaign against my marriage. What do you want? She was quiet for a long moment, turning her cup in circles. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, softer, without the sharp edges I'd come to expect. I wanted Mike to love me the way Ethan loves you. The admission caught me off guard. I stared at her, searching for the angle, the manipulation. But her eyes were wet, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. I made a mistake, she continued. I left him because I thought I could do better. Thought I deserved someone more successful, more ambitious. And then I saw him with you, and he was so happy, and I realized I'd thrown away something real for something that didn't exist. She laughed, a broken sound. So I took him back. Or I tried to. But he wasn't happy. He's never been happy, not since he lost you. That's not my problem. I know. I know it's not. She looked up, meeting my eyes. I sent the video because I was jealous. Because you have this man who adores you, who waited years for you, and I have someone who looks at me like I'm a consolation prize. It wasn't fair. You weren't supposed to win. Win? I shook my head. This isn't a competition, Emily. It was never a competition. Everything's a competition. She said it like a fact, like the air she breathed. You just didn't know you were playing. We sat in silence for a moment. Part of me wanted to hate her, it would be easier, cleaner. But looking at her now, stripped of her armor, I just felt sad. Sad for the woman who saw life as a battlefield. Sad for the relationship she'd sabotaged before it could even begin. Sad for all the energy she'd wasted on tearing me down instead of building herself up. I'm not going to forgive you, I said finally. What you did was cruel and manipulative, and I don't owe you anything. But I'm also not going to fight you anymore. I have a marriage to build, a life to live. I don't have room for you in it. She nodded slowly, as if she'd expected this. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. Not for the way I did it, I'm not sorry for wanting what you have. But I'm sorry for the lies. The video was real, but the context was wrong. Ethan wasn't cheating. He was ending things cleanly and kindly. I wanted you to see what I saw. A man who was capable of letting go. I thought if you doubted him, you'd push him away and then maybe he'd come to you. She had the grace to look ashamed. It sounds stupid when you say it out loud. It is stupid. I stood, gathering my bag. But I appreciate the honesty. And Emily, for your sake, I hope you figure out how to be happy without taking pieces of other people's happiness. It's possible. I'm learning. I left her there, alone with her cold latte and her complicated feelings. As I walked back to the office, something in my chest felt lighter. Not forgiveness exactly, but release. The war was over and I was done fighting. I told Ethan everything that night, the meeting, the conversation, the strange sense of closure I'd found. He listened without interrupting, his hand wrapped around mine. Do you believe her? He asked when I finished. About the video, about what I said to her. I do. And I meant it. She had no reason to lie about that. Not anymore. He pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my forehead. I'm sorry you had to deal with that alone. I should have been there. You're here now. That's what matters. I tilted my head back to look at him. We're okay, you know. Us. Whatever Emily throws at us, whatever Mike does, we're going to be okay. I know. He smiled, that rare, real smile that still made my heart skip. We're unbreakable, Caitlyn Cole. Didn't you get the memo? I laughed, and it felt like freedom. Must have missed it. Too busy being happy. Then let me remind you. He kissed me, slow and sweet, and for a long moment the world outside disappeared. There was only this, his arms, his warmth, his love. The love that had waited 3 years and would have waited forever. The love that had started as convenience and grown into something extraordinary. When we finally pulled apart, breathless and smiling, I knew it was true. We were unbreakable. Not because we were perfect, but because we'd chosen each other anyway. Through the lies and the secrets, the doubts and the fears. Through everything. And that, I realized, was what real love looked like. Not the fairy tale. Not the perfect story. Just 2 people, flawed and human, choosing each other every single day. I couldn't wait to spend the rest of my life choosing him. 6 months later, I stood in front of our bathroom mirror and stared at the small plastic stick in my hand like it might suddenly grow legs and explain itself. 2 lines. Clear as day. Positive. My first instinct was panic. We hadn't planned this, hadn't even discussed it really. We'd been so focused on building our marriage, on navigating the aftermath of the Mike and Emily disaster, on simply learning to be together, that the future had seemed like a distant concept. Something we'd get to eventually when we were ready. Apparently, the universe had other ideas. I walked out to the living room on unsteady legs. Ethan was at the kitchen island, making his famous weekend omelets, humming along to some indie playlist he'd discovered. He looked up when I entered and his smile faded into concern. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I crossed the room, set the test on the counter in front of him, and waited. He looked at it. Looked at me. Looked at it again. For a long, suspended moment, he didn't move. Didn't speak. I watched the emotions play across his face, shock, disbelief, and then something else. Something that looked almost like wonder. "We're having a baby." "I think so. I mean, yes. Apparently." I laughed, a little hysterically. Surprise. He was around the counter in seconds, his hands cupping my face, his forehead pressed to mine. "A baby," he whispered, like he was testing the words. "Our baby. Are you okay with this? I know we didn't plan." "I'm more than okay." He kissed me, soft and reverent. "I'm incredible. I'm terrified. I'm the happiest I've ever been." Another kiss. "I'm going to be a dad. We're going to be parents. We're going to be parents." He pulled back, his eyes shining with tears he was trying desperately not to shed. "God, Caitlyn. I love you. I love you so much. I love you too." And I did. More than I'd ever thought possible. More than I'd known I could. The pregnancy transformed our lives in ways I hadn't anticipated. Ethan, already attentive, became almost aggressively protective. He researched everything: birthing methods, pediatricians, the best strollers on the market. He read to my belly every night, convinced the baby could hear him. He woke at 3 a.m. to make me toast when the morning sickness, which was definitely not confined to mornings, struck without warning. "You don't have to do this," I mumbled one night, curled around the toilet at 2 a.m. "You have work tomorrow." "So do you. And yet here you are, growing a human." He handed me a glass of water, then gently moved my hair out of my face. "I've got you. Always." It was in these small moments that I fully understood the depth of what we'd built. Not the grand gestures or the dramatic confrontations, but the quiet, consistent presence. The choice, made fresh every day, to show up for each other. At work, my pregnancy became public around 4 months. The office reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Even Jessica, my perpetually stressed supervisor, softened at the news. Only one person's response gave me pause. Chloe pulled me aside after a team meeting, her expression carefully neutral. "We need to talk." My heart sank. "You're not happy for us." "I'm thrilled for you. You know that." She leaned against the wall, crossing her arms. "But Caitlyn, you've been married for less than a year. You've known Ethan for real for what, 8 months? And now you're having a baby. That's a lot. For anyone. I know it's fast. Fast is an understatement. It's warp speed." Her voice softened. "I'm not saying this to be difficult. I'm saying it because I love you and I need to know you're sure that this is what you want, not just what's happening to you." It was a fair question. One I'd asked myself more than once in the past weeks. Was I ready? Were we ready? Had we given ourselves enough time to just be a couple before adding the complexity of parenthood? But every time I asked those questions, I came back to the same answer. "I'm sure," I told Chloe. Not about being ready, I don't think anyone's ever really ready. But about him. About us. Whatever comes, we'll figure it out together. That's what we do. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay. Good. Just checking." She pulled me into a hug. "I'm going to be the best aunt ever. Just so you know. The only aunt. You have no competition." "Damn right I don't." Mike's attempted reconciliation came on a Thursday. I was 7 months pregnant, huge and uncomfortable, making my slow way to the parking garage after work. He was waiting by my car, looking older than I remembered. Thinner. His eyes had a hollow quality that spoke of sleepless nights and too many regrets. Caitlyn. He stepped forward, then stopped when I instinctively moved back. Please. Just give me 5 minutes. There's nothing to say, Mike. There's everything to say. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it hurt. I was an idiot. The biggest idiot on the planet. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too weak to tell Emily no. And I've spent every day since regretting it. I'm married, Mike. I'm 7 months pregnant with someone else's child. What exactly are you hoping to accomplish here? His eyes dropped to my belly and something flickered across his face, pain maybe or regret. I know I've lost you. I'm not stupid enough to think I can fix this. But I needed you to hear it. Needed you to know that I know what I did. That I'll spend the rest of my life knowing it. Does Emily know you're here? He flinched. We're not together anymore. Haven't been for months. She couldn't handle that I was still in love with you. Couldn't handle that I thought about you constantly. It ate us alive. I should have felt something, satisfaction maybe or vindication. But all I felt was tired. Tired of his drama, his weakness, his endless need for absolution. I'm sorry you're hurting, I said, and meant it. I am. But I can't be the person who makes it better. Not anymore. That part of my life is over. I know. His voice cracked. I needed to say it. To your face. I'm sorry, Caitlyn. For everything. He left before I could respond, disappearing into the gray concrete of the parking garage. I stood there for a long moment, one hand on my belly, feeling the baby kick and roll. Then I got in my car and drove home to my husband. I didn't tell Ethan about the conversation. Not because I was hiding it, but because it didn't matter. Mike was part of my past. Ethan was my present. My future. My everything. Our daughter was born on a Tuesday in June, 3 weeks early and in a hurry. The labor was fast and furious. Ethan barely got me to the hospital in time. I remember the fluorescent lights of the delivery room, the sterile smell, the pressure of Ethan's hand in mine. And then suddenly a cry. Tiny and furious and absolutely perfect. She's here, Ethan breathed, tears streaming down his face. Oh my God, Caitlyn. She's here. They placed her on my chest and I looked down at this tiny red-faced creature with her father's eyes and my stubborn chin, and felt my heart crack open in a way I hadn't known was possible. This was our daughter. Ours. Created from love and chaos and the most unlikely series of events. Hi, baby, I whispered. I'm your mom. And this, I looked up at Ethan, his face wet with tears, is your dad. We're so happy you're here. We named her Grace. Grace Ellen Cole, Ellen after my mother who'd cried for an hour when we told her. Grace because she was exactly that. An unexpected gift. Proof that sometimes the most beautiful things come from the most broken beginnings. The first year of Grace's life was a blur of sleepless nights and endless wonder. We learned together how to swaddle, how to decode different cries, how to function on 3 hours of broken sleep. Ethan took to fatherhood with the same intensity he brought to everything else, researching sleep training methods, tracking feedings in an app, waking with me for every middle-of-the-night feeding even though I told him he didn't have to. I want to, he insisted. I don't want to miss anything. And he didn't. He was there for her first smile, her first laugh, her first tentative roll from back to belly. He sang to her in the shower, read her complicated philosophy books just to hear the sound of his voice, danced with her around the living room at 3 a.m. when nothing else would soothe her. Watching him with her, I fell in love with him all over again. Deeper this time. The kind of love that wasn't just passion or companionship, but something almost spiritual. The recognition that this man, this quiet, brilliant, unexpectedly tender man, was exactly who I was meant to be with. On our second anniversary, we went back to the city clerk's office. Not to do anything official, we'd been legally married for 2 years after all. But to remember. To honor the strange, chaotic beginning of our unlikely story. We stood outside the building, Grace in a carrier on Ethan's chest, looking at the doors where everything had started. "I can't believe I married a stranger that day," I said, shaking my head. "What was I thinking?" "You were thinking you'd rather take a chance on something new than drown in something old." Ethan shifted Grace's weight, adjusting the carrier. "You were thinking you deserved better than what Mike gave you." "You were thinking that you had kind eyes," I interrupted. "I remember thinking that. Even through the shock and the heartbreak, I noticed your eyes. How kind they were." He smiled, that rare, real smile that still made my heart flutter. "I noticed your dress. The color. I thought, she looks like hope." "Hope?" I laughed softly. "I felt like the opposite of hope. And yet here we are." He gestured at our daughter, our life, everything we'd built. 2 years later. Married. Parents. Happy. Unbelievably happy. I leaned into him, breathing in the familiar scent of him, coffee and sandalwood and home. "Thank you, Ethan. For taking a chance on me that day. Thank you for saying yes." He kissed my forehead, lingering. "Best decision I ever made." We stood there for a long moment, a small family outside an ordinary government building, celebrating the most extraordinary thing that had ever happened to us. People passed by, oblivious to the significance of the moment. A clerk hurried past with a coffee, probably late for her shift. A couple emerged from the doors, marriage license in hand, glowing with new love. I caught the woman's eye and smiled. She smiled back, her hand tight in her new husband's. "Congratulations," I called out. "May your marriage be as beautiful as you hope." "Thank you," she called back, beaming. They walked past us, disappearing into the city, and I felt a surge of something like prayer. Not religious exactly. Just hope. Hope that their story would be as kind to them as ours had been to us. "Ready to go home?" Ethan asked. "Ready." We walked to the car together, our small family, and drove back to the life we'd built. The apartment with the nursery we'd painted together. The kitchen where we'd learned to cook as a team. The bedroom where we still stayed up too late talking, still found new things to discover about each other. That night, after Grace was asleep, we sat on the balcony with glasses of wine, one for me, one for him, a first since the pregnancy, and watched the city lights flicker below us. "Where do we go from here?" I asked. "Now that we've made it past the chaos, past the drama, past everything. What's next?" Ethan considered this, his hand warm in mine. "More of this, I hope. More quiet nights. More dance parties with Grace. More learning each other, growing together." He turned to look at me, his eyes soft in the dim light. "I don't need drama, Caitlyn. I don't need excitement. I just need you. Every day. For the rest of my life." "Same." I lifted our joined hands, kissed his knuckles. "Same." The city hummed below us, full of millions of other stories, other couples, other beginnings. But in that moment, ours was the only one that mattered. We'd started with a lie and built a truth. Started with convenience and found love. Started with 2 broken people and become a family. And as I looked at my husband, at the life we'd created together, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was only the beginning. Epilogue, 5 years later. "Mommy! Mommy! Daddy said I can have a pony." I looked up from the stove to find Grace, now 5 and utterly convinced of her own powers of persuasion, charging into the kitchen with Ethan trailing behind her, a sheepish expression on his face. "I said no such thing," he protested. "I said ponies are lovely animals that require a great deal of care and responsibility." "That means yes," Grace announced, climbing onto a stool at the kitchen island. "Mommy, can I?" "No ponies," I said firmly. "We live in an apartment. Ponies need grass." We could get grass. We could not get grass. But Daddy said. I said nothing of the sort. Ethan dropped a kiss on the top of my head as he passed, grabbing coffee with the other hand. She's very good at reinterpretation. It's your influence. My influence? She gets her manipulation skills from you and you know it. He grinned, unrepentant. Fair point. We moved through the morning routine like the well-oiled machine we'd become. Breakfast, school bags, arguments about shoes and hair bows and whether it was too cold for the sparkly dress Grace was determined to wear. It was February in Los Angeles, which meant it was absolutely not too cold, but I'd learned to pick my battles. Ethan drove her to school on his way to work, a ritual they both treasured. I watched them go from the window, my husband, my daughter, my whole world, and felt that familiar surge of gratitude. Later that day, an envelope arrived in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Caitlyn, I'm getting married. For real this time. To someone who makes me want to be better. I wanted you to know because, in a strange way, I have you to thank. Losing you taught me that love isn't something you fall into, it's something you build. Every day. With intention. I hope you're happy. From everything I hear, you are. Take care. Mike. I read the letter twice, then set it aside. No anger rose up, no old wounds reopened. Just a quiet acknowledgement that life moved on for everyone. That people could change, could grow, could become versions of themselves they never expected. When Ethan came home that night, I showed him the letter. He read it in silence, then handed it back. How do you feel? He asked, the same question he'd asked on that long-ago night after Mike first showed up at my apartment. Peaceful, I said, surprised to find it was true. Glad for him. Glad for us. Good. He pulled me close, his chin resting on top of my head. That's exactly how you should feel. Later, after Grace was in bed, we sat on the balcony like we had so many nights before. The city had changed, new buildings, new lights, but we were still here. Still together. Still choosing each other. Hey, I said softly. Remember when we got married? He laughed. I try not to. It was the most stressful day of my life. Mine too. I leaned into him. But also the best. The absolute best. He kissed me then, slow and sweet, and I felt the same flutter I'd felt that first night in the park, when he'd looked at me with those kind eyes and proposed the most insane idea I'd ever heard. I love you, Caitlyn Cole. I love you too, Ethan Cole. Forever. Forever sounds good. And it did. It sounded perfect. The end.